Adelaide's had 36 consecutive months of growth. Prices are up and rents are tight. But here's the real question. Are we actually solving the housing problem or just talking about it? With the state election approaching, the policies being discussed right now will shape what Adelaide looks like for the next decade. Today, I'm joined by Bruce Djite, Executive Director of the Property Council of South Australia. And we're unpacking what's really happening behind the scenes in Adelaide property. Welcome to the Adelaide Property Pod. Bruce, thanks for joining me.
Great to be here, mate.
Now, before we crack in, we should probably disclose our personal relationship. And I was doing a little bit of research in the lead up to today, thinking when I actually first met you. Do you remember how far back that goes?
2006, I reckon.
Late 06.
Late 06, yeah.
Yep. So we're talking 20 years. We're probably disclosing our age a little bit here now.
Scary, isn't it?
But a fresh-faced Bruce.
I wouldn't even have been 20.
I know.
When we met. How good.
So 20 years was when we first crossed paths, and you've had obviously a very decorated football career in that time. You've had some success here in Adelaide with United and in the A-League with the Gold Coast. You obviously played abroad in Turkey and through Southeast Asia. You amassed 259 career games as well as 9 caps for the Socceroos. Is there a standout in that sort of is the front of mind?
Well, I'm happy you've got the stats because my son was asking me the other day. There was the Anthony Caceres who plays in the A-League. It was his 299th game, and he said, "Hey, Papa, how many games did you play?" And I said, "Actually, I don't know." So thanks for the stats. In terms of highlights, I would say there's 2. It's playing for the Socceroos. My debut was extra special, and the other one was winning the grand final here at Adelaide Oval for Adelaide United in the A-League. So they're 2 clear standouts for me in my career. Yes, it was great to play overseas and do all those things, but in terms of standouts, Socceroos debut and win the grand final here for Adelaide United.
Yeah. Pretty nice ones to look back on. Now, throughout your sporting career, I know you were studying. What were you actually studying while you were playing?
Did a Bachelor of Business through Griffith University, actually. Yeah.
And the transition from football to property, I know you've been with the Property Council for a couple of years now, but how did that come about? And what's one thing that surprised you the most since coming into the property sector?
So in my studies, I love the business aspect. I'm really interested in finance and investing, even on a personal level. But I also loved international relations. I was able to pick, elective subjects like everyone or most people at university, and international relations was something that really interested me. How's the world come to where it is today? How does diplomacy work? The Cold Wars, the Hot Wars, what happens behind the scenes? And having a lot of global experience, having lived in Turkey, China, I was born in the US, I've grown up in Australia, lived in Indonesia as well, South Korea. So with that sort of global lens, and as an older student, I don't see great benefit of a 17-year-old going to uni or an 18-year-old going to uni who's never being outside of the state or the country and doing international relations. There's some things that the book tells you, but you need to have that context knowledge to really understand how the world works. So that's what sort of led me into that advocacy space, if you like. I was always really interested in diplomacy. I'd always meet the ambassador of different countries I was living in. So following playing, retired from playing. Obviously, went and worked for Fox Sports back in Sydney. I grew up in Sydney, so went back there for about 6 months. Then got offered the football director role here at Adelaide United. So moved the family back to Adelaide in June or July 2019. Perfect timing because we all know how good we had it here during COVID. But also a difficult and great at the same time experience in terms of managing a professional football outfit, the football side of it, during COVID. You had the lockdowns. The boys had to go into to the hub to finish the season. TV deals, TV rights changed very rapidly in that time. It was like a MBA on steroids. It was real life learning at the time, and a lot of difficult conversations. You talk about difficult conversations. Well, try telling young players or foreigners, some who that they've been stood down and are only on JobKeeper. And the obvious next question is, okay, but when do I get back onto my full salary, or what happens next? You don't have an answer. Timeframes, you don't have an answer. So really tough conversations as a leader to have when you don't have an answer. Often people look to you for leadership, but we weren't empowered with those answers at that time. So following COVID, I thought to myself, you know what, the football economy is quite. I'm quite ambitious. I'm not afraid to admit that. And the football economy, to be honest, in this country, it's not huge. So I thought, you know what, there's not many opportunities in football. I really enjoyed my role, but thought I'd give something else a crack to prove to myself and to others like that. There's more to me than just football. It's easy to be the football guy. Yep. They've watched you play. They've seen you grow up from a teenager into an adult, into a man. They've seen you on broadcast. Oh yeah, Bruce is the football guy. Didn't really want to be that either for the rest of my life, certainly. So threw my hat in the ring for a Committee for Adelaide's CEO role. Was lucky enough to get that. Had a fantastic board. David Lloyd was my chairman. He was former Vice Chancellor of UniSA. People like Trevor Cook, who's the CEO of Commercial in General. People like Alicia Genet, who was working at Santos at the time, now at Fleet Space. Like, we're talking about really high caliber people. Henry Mentz he was managing partner at Deloitte at the time. So the access to that caliber of business person, that caliber of academic, and all the members that we had was fantastic for me, because you can learn off people. You're never the smartest person in the room. You're never the 10th smartest person in the room, so you're learning off all these geniuses, which was fantastic. I did that for a couple of years, and then, the property council role came up. It's not a role that comes up often in this state. Daniel Gannon, my predecessor, did it for about 8 or 9 years as SA Executive Director. There were people like Brian Moulds and Nathan Payne who did, I think, 9 or 10 year stints each. So it's not a role that comes up often. And because it's such a critical part of the economy, Australia-wide, property, Australia's economy is built on property, and the property council is not just about residential homes or office towers. It encumbers all built form assets, right? Social infrastructure, student accommodation, retirement villages, huge capital markets focus as well. So to enter into the role, and there's household names here in South Australia, I won't name them, and to be able to learn off those people, advocate on behalf of their organisations, I thought was a great opportunity. And it's a national organisation. My boss is the national CEO, Mike Zorbas. So to be able to work with people of this calibre, I thought was another good learning opportunity. And it's been 3.5 years now and still loving it.
Excellent. And what's one thing that's probably surprised you the most in that time? And also, so people are aware, what is the primary role of the Property Council?
Yeah. Okay, so what surprised me? Nothing really surprised me these days, but something that is fascinating is how politicized development is. We've got a housing crisis because housing has been politicized. Not in my backyard, put in another electorate. I've got a marginal seat. That'll upset enough hundreds of people that might tip it in the other into the other party. I'm not privy to those discussions, but it's clear. Even when developers are following the policy, they're following, the regulations and ticking all the boxes. Stranger things have happened. It's sad, it's disappointing, but it's also the reality. And I'm sure we'll get to speaking about politics and the government a little bit later. But the politicising of development from all sides, the Greens, Labor, Liberal, One Nation, independents, depending on who their constituency is. That was fascinating for me. Sometimes you just want to hit your head against the brick wall. In terms of the Property Council, we're an advocacy body, we're a federated body, we're one company. A lot of other industry bodies, they might have a national headquarters, but they're separate companies. The Property Council is one company. That gives us a lot of policy grunt, if you like. We're able to work across all asset classes and feed off each other's expertise. We essentially advocate for, I'll keep it simple, 2-3 things: better planning for better cities, better tax and investment settings, and improving the nation's productivity, and especially the sector's productivity for a prosperous nation. They're 3 key elements we advocate on. Yes, they're high level. Yes, they're broad. There's a lot in that. But essentially, we come up with policy solutions, and we try to convince governments to adopt them, not just for the betterment of the sector, but for the betterment of the state economy in my jurisdiction here, but the national economy at large.
Yep. Awesome. The term housing crisis, we hear it a lot through the media. It gets thrown around left, right and centre. If we think about the South Australian market more specifically, are we in a housing crisis right now?
Absolutely. And to be honest, there's a lot of it's not something that happened today. It's not something that happened yesterday. It's something that's built up over decades. So to be able to address it in a material way where the average punter on the street feels that the market's loosened up, that's going to take some time, and it's going to take some bold, ambitious government policy. We feel that we're starting to see that, and I can get a bit into that a little later, but definitely going to take a bit of time to unwind some of the, this pent-up shortage of supply that has eventuated over decades for a number of reasons, which I don't need to delve into. We are where we are. You've seen house prices almost triple here since COVID. Since COVID. And we were lucky enough to host the Premier yesterday for a pre-election lunch. And he gets it. We've had sequential growth for 3 decades more in this state. Now we're on the cusp of exponential growth. There's a whole generation of people who've never experienced that. They have to change their mindset, and they have to have a mentality of, yes, why not, rather than little old Adelaide, sorry, we can't, and that's a challenge, it's a challenge for bureaucrats. It'll be a challenge for some politicians, but it's not a challenge for the industry, who's willing and able to deliver more asset classes, because you talk about housing, but people also need jobs. There's a lot of jobs in the state at the moment. There's heaps coming. We've got AUKUS coming, Torrens to Darlington, the North-South Corridor tunnels. There was mention of the Northern Water Project, which hasn't been announced yet, but could be coming for BHP to expand copper mining up at Olympic Dam. There is a range of huge policy decisions and commitments that have been made that are moving. We haven't even spoken about Women's and Children's Hospital, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's going to attract people. That's going to attract financial capital as well. Human financial capital, starting to look at South Australia. And in large part, we're being spoken about more positively now, because the eyes of the nation, and increasingly the eyes of the world, are actually looking at Adelaide. Adelaide's been mentioned. Why? Because we have some marquee events. And people talk about bread and circuses. It's a distraction from the real challenges. And absolutely there's challenges, cost of living, all those things, predominantly which comes back to housing. Like, what's your biggest cost? It's your rent or your mortgage, right? So, the eyes of the nation are on us. I think the eyes of the world are on us. I think it's important to have a good brand. Someone who wasn't born here, not grown up here, I understand the importance of brand. When I say Paris, we all think of the same 3 or 4 things. It's romance, it's fashion, it's the Eiffel Tower. There's some things that are just synonymous with places. Adelaide never had that. Not in a positive way.
Yeah.
It was very negative.
True. Very true.
I still travel a lot. And last week I was in Melbourne. And the first 4 or 5 things people said to me was like, oh my God, South Australia, it's gone so well now. I need to get over there for Gather Round. Or I went to live golf. Or can't believe you guys took the MotoGP. That was my favorite event, but now I'll be coming over. These are people who never even factored in coming for a holiday, let alone coming to live, let alone coming to set up a business, let alone coming to invest any sort of capital into this state. Now they're now in their consideration. So all in all, it's good to have growth challenges, but they are challenges. And the housing crisis is the centerpiece of the challenge, because if you don't have anywhere to live, doesn't matter how good your events are, doesn't matter how good your economy is going, people won't come. It's too hard. Yep. And they've got options.
Yep, absolutely. We've seen some initiatives rolled out, some rezoning of suburbs and areas. We've seen approval numbers rise, but we still can't deliver homes fast enough. Where's the bottleneck?
That's a great question. and we've seen some good policy, and even as recently as yesterday, the Premier was announcing some policy in the lead up to the election. We put out we called it Ready, Set, Grow, South Australia's Prosperity Roadmap. That was our election platform. We launched it late last year, and that the government has actually committed to adopting a fair few things in there. When it comes to industrial and a whole range of other asset classes, but especially when it comes to housing. Announced the pattern book. What's a pattern book? It's the bungalow. It's the sandstone villa that you saw being constructed 100+ years ago. That's a pattern book. You go around Rose Park, houses all look the same because they all use the same pattern. One of the challenges in delivering housing is that everything's bespoke. You want a tailor-made suit? It's going to cost you heaps more than a suit off the rack.
Yep.
You want a tailor-made house? That's fine. But then don't talk about affordability. You want something that's affordable? Then repetition is your friend. And that's what a pattern book will do. We're not just talking about pattern books for houses or townhouses. We're talking about pattern books for apartments, really. That's when you're going to get the best bang for buck. That's when you're going to get the economies of scale in terms of, really making a dent in some of those housing targets. The Premier announced greatest land release, I think he called it, in the history of the state at the time. That was about 3.5 years ago. Not one house has been built on those announcements, right? And that's for a myriad of reasons, some of which the government has learnt the hard way. Water infrastructure. People think there's pipes that go everywhere. They don't. They don't. And it's not just about laying pipe. It's about the pressure. It's about, Bolivar, which is the wastewater treatment plant. What's its capacity? Again, we've had sequential growth where you've been able to amend things as things grew. You could see it coming well in advance. We got exponential growth now. Different decisions have to be made. Different way of thinking has to be implemented because the bottleneck really is in the execution. Yep. Policy's not been bad.
Yep.
Policy's been not bad. Could always be better, but not bad, right? The problem is in the execution, the outcome. Yep. We have members who come to us and say, hold on, the government just spoke about a code amendment in the CBD to increase building heights. We just met with the bureaucrats about a tower we're looking for in the city. They're saying, oh, we think it's too high. It's out of character with the area you're trying to build it. That's the bottleneck. And that mentality needs to change, because what'll end up happening is that, the politicians won't get the outcomes that they've promised, not because they didn't set the policy, because they've done that largely. There's a lot more work still to do, but that's not the key issue here. The key issue is the execution's not happening. Our CEO's not empowered to make decisions. Is it a mindset shift that's required? I don't know. Probably a little bit of all of the above, but there needs to be a greater culture of, yes, more risk taking, and for us, we call it very conservative, but for the government, they say, oh, that's a bit risky, that needs to shift. Yep. Because unless it does, you can make all the greatest announcements you like, you won't actually deliver any outcomes.
Yep. We've got a state election coming up. We've heard a lot been thrown around from both sides, well, all sides really, from stamp duty relief to land releases, infrastructure. Which one has caught your eye the most, and which policy that you've heard thus far would shift the needle or have the most impact in this market?
I think the current government's commitment to establishing a $500 million fast-track apartment fund will be a game changer, because what they're going to do is effectively underwrite apartments so that developers can get projects out of the ground quicker, right? And de-risk those projects. There's currently 4,400 odd apartments that have been approved in the CBD alone, yet to commence construction, right? So there is some market failure because you got construction costs going through the roof. That's still happening, and they haven't even started pouring concrete for those tunnels or for on the peninsula for AUKUS requirements, right? And we're talking the equivalent of 15 Royal Adelaide hospitals. 15. That doesn't include the tunnels. Crazy. Just on AUKUS projects, right? So what the challenge is going to be is cost of construction, feasibility, and underwriting apartments, which the government won't have to call in, because they will sell off the plan predominantly, but also as the apartments are being built. So it's, we would argue, low risk. If the government does have to call a couple in, you're going to spend that money anyway trying to deliver expensive outcomes for those who can't afford it. We're talking housing trust, et cetera, et cetera. So why not use some for key workers? Yep. There's nurses, doctors, fireys, a whole range of, policemen and policewomen, a whole range of key workers who can't afford to live near where they work, teachers, et cetera, right? So why not use that as an opportunity if you had to call any apartments in because they didn't sell? But that is one policy announcement that we truly believe will really fast track the delivery of apartment living predominantly. And when you couple that with the $2 million threshold for downsizes, we think that works very, very well for brand new apartments, right? You're selling your home, you're moving into an apartment for $2 million. You can still get a very nice 3-bedroom apartment in Adelaide. So, and that creates a domino effect. Someone moves out of the house. Someone buys that house. They've moved out of their house. Someone else buys that house. They might have moved out of a rental. Someone else gets a rental. The domino effect of getting that market moving will be significantly important, because yes, we have a housing supply issue and we need to deliver more homes, but we've also have a highly friction market when it comes to transacting homes, largely because of stamp duty. So removing that friction will help us better utilize the rooms we have. Because if you counted how many bedrooms we have in Australia, we've got a lot. Problem is, you've got generally older people, might be by themselves, they might be a widow or whatever. living in 5-bedroom homes.
Mm.
There's one person sleeping, there's 5 bedrooms.
Yep.
So that's not where the problem is. The problem is we've got the wrong demographic living in the wrong asset at that time of life.
Yep. There's been a lot of support thrown around for first home buyers in the current government. Do you think they're working, the policies and the grants that are being offered, or is it just driving prices up even higher?
Well, that's an interesting one. I think the South Australian government's policy is working. I think the federal government's policy drives demand without doing anything for supply. That 5% deposit scheme to get a home, you're just forcing people into a market of finite homes. You increase demand without increasing supply, prices go up.
Yeah, it's an interesting little rock and a hard place for the government to work their way through at the moment. I've got a couple of rapid fire questions to close out. Houses or apartments long term?
In terms of,
is it the solution to our housing crisis?
Oh, well, if you want to get your scale and, we've got a housing accord target federally agreed of 16,000, a large chunk of them is going to have to be apartments. I don't think the state's ever built more than 13,000 homes in any given year, maybe 14 when they had the home builder grant during COVID. But you're going to have to really lean into apartments. And I think that's why we're starting to see a shift in the government. They've got to focus on growing out, but they've also got to focus on growing up as well.
Assuming the current government remains in power, what happens with pricing to homes in the next 12 months?
I reckon it goes up 6-7%. I don't think it matters who's in power. That's going to happen just because you can't get the supply on the ground quick enough to alleviate the pent-up demand. So a buoyant economy, a lot of demand for homes, you're probably looking at 7% increase in house prices. That's my crystal ball anyway.
Yep. And last one, do you still think Adelaide is undervalued nationally?
Yes.
And why?
I think Adelaide's undervalued nationally simply because the smart money has only started to move. Probably 3-4 years ago, smart money started to move. I think if you bought then, you're in a very good position. And we're just getting started as a state, to be honest. If Olympic Dam does get expanded, there's going to be a whole lot of people who otherwise wouldn't have considered living in Adelaide moving here. As AUKUS matures and, nuclear submarines really start to happen, you're going to see a whole lot of defence people moving here that the states would otherwise never have attracted. There's a range of economic opportunities. You've got a university that's just come together as well, UniSA and Adelaide Uni, or Uni of Adelaide, now Adelaide University. You've got a range of academics who are going to be looking for homes. So as the economic wheels of South Australia really start to churn, you're going to, a house in Rose Park or a house in Unley or North Adelaide or a house in Manapara or Elizabeth or Seacliff, doesn't matter where you live, the demand for those is exponentially going to increase. I think we're just getting started.
We could talk about this for hours, Bruce, but we'll leave it there. There's certainly a lot of work to be done in Adelaide, and you're going to play a pretty big part in that role. So thank you very much for coming on to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Adelaide Property Pod. If you've enjoyed this conversation, make sure you're following the show so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you next time.